back in the dark ages when I first started studying the craft in the 70s, on my own. I was a teenager. The first book I ever read on real witchcraft was Diary of a Witch by Sybil Leek, and I was mesmerized. I just loved it. I kept reading it over and over again. And Sybil Leek was a very nice author, and it piqued my interest. However, there was no practical information on how to become a witch or how to work magic or anything about witchcraft. Well, the next book after that, which I was able to read, was called Mastering Witchcraft by Paul Husson. And Sybil Leek was a very positive, jovial, sort of almost motherly, maternal type of influence, whereas Paul Husson seemed like the devil incarnate. But the thing about Mastering Witchcraft that was so amazing for me was, even though, if you've read it, it's a wonderful read. If you haven't read it, I would recommend purchasing a copy of it. There's a lot in there about attack magic and manipulating people to love you and all kinds of stuff like that. And so there's definitely no fluffy stuff in Mastering Witchcraft. But the thing about Mastering Witchcraft that is so wonderful is that it actually talks about building magical power so that you can, as a working witch, as a working magician, make changes in the world. So that was my very first real introduction to practical magic. And of course, obviously, later on, I got training and whatnot from real practitioners and not just self-study. And I was able to understand a lot more about how the craft works and how magic works. A lot of times when people listen to the podcasts on our website and through iTunes, I get emails from them saying, those are very nice and everything, but don't you ever cast a spell? Because everything is kind of spiritually oriented. Spiritual principle is what I talk about a lot in the lectures. And so I can see how that gives a false impression that I don't believe in magic or spell casting. But obviously, anybody that's a witch casts a spell. I mean, there you have it. I mean, I don't know many people in the craft that don't cast spells, and I do too. And I think that a thorough grounding in spiritual principle is very, very essential to one's success in spell casting, so that we get our priorities straight. But so I'm not going to talk anything more about spiritual principle in this particular episode. I want to just focus on one aspect of practical magic, and that is building your pyramid of power. And Paul Husson talks about the pyramid of power. I think he might call it the witch's pyramid. I can't remember. But there's a lot of other authors, and it's a concept that did not come out of that book. It's a very old concept. And the pyramid of power is something that is very important if you want to be effective in spell casting, to be able to have this in your own psyche built very, very strongly. Otherwise, you won't be successful. You won't effect change in the world. All right, and so there's 4 sides to the pyramid. The 4 sides are faith, imagination, will, and secrecy. So we're just going to go through each side and call it a day. So the first side of that pyramid, faith. Remember, faith is not belief. Belief is something that you hope is true. Faith is something that you are certain is true, even though you can't see it with your eyes. All right, so I have faith at nighttime that the sun will come up in the morning because I have a history of the sun coming up in the morning. So we want to be able to build faith very early on in our magical training, so that when we work a magical operation, we don't hope that it works. We don't believe that it might work. We don't say, please, goddess, help me make this work because I'm not good enough. We want to actually know that our magic is so effective and so powerful that it will work just as much as I know that when I get up and decide that I'm going to go to the other side of the room, that my legs will carry me there. That I have that much faith. So one of the ways to build faith is to notice how many times in your life, take a note of how many times in your life you don't believe in your own powers. How many times do you give your power over to the power of, let's say, advertising, or your mate, or your teacher, or not think for yourself? The only way to build faith is you want to build faith on something called knowledge versus belief. And you can, if you want to, there's a whole podcast way early. You have to look through the archives. It's a live lecture that I gave called Faith, Knowledge versus Belief, and it really goes into it very, very deeply. But understand that you want to build your faith on knowledge, not on belief. So you have to start small. When you start working spells, start working on things that are a small stretch for you. Don't go for levitating the piano on your first try, because you don't want to shatter your faith. You want to know that it will work, and you want to build it very, very slowly and very, very surely. So if you're doing, say, a spell for prosperity, that you want to increase your monthly income, increase it by maybe 1%. Instead of doing a spell to win a $5 million lottery, if you've never had the concept of that much money, right? If you're doing a spell for a perfect mate, but you've never had a very good relationship, how about doing a spell on your own personality that makes you more attractive to the type of people that you want to be attractive to? If you're doing a spell for anything, just make it allow it to be baby steps for a while, and after a while you'll gain momentum, and you can be very, very surprised at how when you start, the sky's the limit. Really, the sky will be the limit, because you have built your faith on knowledge, not belief. All right, so faith is the certainty that something is occurring even though you cannot yet see it with your eyes. All right? Now, imagination for us, the second side of the pyramid, is first and foremost the power of visualization, the ability to formulate within your mind's eye the goal at hand. So if you're doing a spell for a new home, that you're doing a spell for a new home, what you want to do is be able to get a picture of that in your mind's eye. So you might want to take a picture of the home of a home of the type that you want to get. Again, I'm not going into ethics today, because there's, the ethics are up to you. But for me, if I was doing a spell for a new home, I would not do a spell for that home that somebody else is already living in. But I might do a spell for that type of home. And so I would get pictures of that type of home out of magazines, and I might paste them onto a board, or actually I use scrapbook is what I like to use. It's my book of fortune, I call it. And you just paste these the images of what you want in the book on the one page of the book, so that you can have an image there, so that you can go between opening your eyes and closing your eyes, opening your eyes and closing your eyes, and being able to see that thing. Okay, if you have trouble visualizing or holding a visualization in your mind's eye, then you need to work on it. You need to actually go to the witch's gym, the magical gym, and actually work that muscle. And so there's several different ways you can do it. The way that was taught to me when I was first starting way back in the, I think it was the Iron Age, is to start out by visualizing just a color, and it's recommended that you try the color red. That seems to be a good, easy color to start with. And then go through the spectrum and be able to visualize any color at will. And then after that, very, very simple geometric shapes, starting with a square, and then a circle, and then a star, and then start to add some depth to that. So a cube or a globe, that kind of thing. And then branch out into combining shapes and combining colors, and then starting to see a scene before your eyes if you have trouble holding a visual image in your mind. People say it's not necessary. Sometimes I hear people say it's not necessary to actually be able to see things. I don't know if that's true or not. I do know that the way I've been taught and the way I teach it and the way I do it is that you do need to see with your mind's eye in order to be effective with magic. So sorry if that bothers you, but that's just my understanding of the process. Another thing that you can do if you are having trouble visualizing scenes is read a lot of good fiction. Read a lot of very well-written fiction that uses descriptive narratives. That will do it quicker than anything I can think of. People that don't read have a hard time with imagination. So read more than watch television, because television and movies are great. There's nothing wrong with them. But if you do those at the expense of reading, your ability to imagine, your image making abilities start to atrophy, because the images are there ready made for you, and so your ability to create those images from within your deep mind are not there. So you're not being exercised. Those are muscles that are not being exercised. So reading is one of the best things that you can do. Reading narratives, reading very, very good fictional descriptive narratives. So get your fantasy novels, sci-fi novels, romance novels, whatever you like. It doesn't have to be, they don't have to be high literature. It can be an easy read as long as there's lots of good descriptive narratives in the literature. So that's imagination. Okay, now will, the ability to will something is another thing that's very, very important. Now, we've talked a lot in different lectures and podcasts about how not my will, but the goddess's will, okay? But don't misunderstand what we're saying. We're not saying abdicate your power to an external force. We're talking about what in Thelema is called discovering one's true will. So when you discover your true will, that's the knowledge and conversation of the holy guardian angel, or giving your life over to the service of spirit or the goddess, however you want to call that, whatever you want to call that, or your higher self being in charge. That is actually finding out what you really want, not what you think you want. That's opening up to your higher self rather than your low-level personality. Okay, so yes, you do need to have a strong will, and some of the ways that you can exercise that when you go to Witch's Gym, you can. One thing is the will list. I love this technique. I don't know of anything that works as quickly or as well. I mean, it's just amazing how quickly and well this works. It looks like a to-do list, but don't confuse it with a to-do list, because the function, the purpose is very different. A to-do list is things that you have to do and you want to make sure get done that day. Okay? A will list is for the purpose of strengthening your magical will. Okay? But they look like the same thing. Put things on your will list at first that are not a huge stretch for you. Make sure that you're so if you know that you have to, like say there was this closet that you've been wanting to clean out for the last year and a half. Okay, it's good to put that on your will list, but put it on and say, I'm going to clean out the right bottom corner of the closet, or I'm going to clean out the top drawer of my nightstand, or I'm going to clean out the southeast corner of my bedroom today. Those kinds of things. All right. And so what you can do is start out with maybe one or two things a day that you're going to work on, and work up to maybe about 6 or 7 a day that you're going to work on. And as you get better with this, obviously you're going to want to make the tasks that you put on your list more challenging for yourself. But know that your purpose in using this list is to strengthen your will. So don't put things on there that you're not going to finish that day. All right. Now, if you do get to the end of the day and you can't, it just didn't happen, something didn't happen, what you need to do is cross that item out and put it on the following day. All right. If you notice that 3 days go by in succession and you've crossed that thing out, eliminate it from your list for the time being, and just be very, very clear with yourself that I am willing this thing off my list. All right. Some other things that you can do that are wonderful for strengthening your will. Habits, little habits. Again, understand what we're doing here is for the purpose of strengthening your magical will. It's not necessarily the thing in question. So, again, and also do not commit to doing any of these things until you know you're ready. So some people do sexual abstinence for a week or a month or 6 months, not because there's anything wrong with sex or because they're trying to give up sex. Not at all. It's because it's difficult. It's because it's hard. It's like they're adding 3 or 4 plates to each side of the barbell. That's why they're doing it. It's not because they want to give up sex or that sex is bad. It's because it's a difficult thing. Complete sexual abstinence for a day for some people is more than they're ready to take care of. So don't put anything on. Don't abstain from something before you're ready. Same thing with, like, some people say, I'm not going to drink coffee for 5 days or for a week or for, whatever. You don't get into that until you know that you're capable of doing it. So I'm spending more time on will just because I think it's very, very important. Another thing you can do as you get good at it is, if you notice that you have a problem saying no to people, like to salespeople or to friends who want to do something with you where you don't really want to do it, there you go. That's your exercise for the week. Is anytime I don't want to accept something, I am going to say no, thank you, and mean it. And that's a very powerful thing to do. Again, there's a lot of psychological benefit to it, but for us, it's for the purpose of strengthening your magical will. All right. Okay, and last but not least, both with this will strengthen both your faith and your will, and that is topic of keeping one's word. So that means that you don't lie, you don't tell a lie. Again, not because of a moralistic reason. There's no morals involved in any of this. This is practical. You don't tell a lie because you do not want to get used to anything that comes out of your mouth as not being so. You want to get used to everything that comes out of your mouth is going to be so. So eventually when you say Mercedes-Benz, then that's going to show up. When you say ozone healed, that's going to show up. When you say house clean, that's going to show up. But you can't do that if you're telling lies. You can't do that if you're stealing, right? Because if you're stealing, you're telling your deep mind, I do not have the power within me to get this thing on my own. Therefore, I have to take it from someone else. So that's going to deplete your magical power, your pyramid powers. If you say you'll be there, you're going to be there. And that's a tough one, to not cancel stuff just because, again, you get used to not making commitments unless you know for sure that you're going to be there. Because after a while, things won't come up that will prohibit you from being there, because your will and your faith and your power is so great that you will move mountains, or I should say mountains will move, seas will part for you to be there. So, but you got to start small, and you got to start by making sure that a witch's word is a witch's word, and it is not to be taken lightly. All right. Okay, so now the final stone, the cornerstone of that pyramid of power, is secrecy. Now remember that we are not in the burning times, and there's no laws in America right now against witchcraft. So it's not so much that you have to be secret in order to save your life. But there's two sides to secrecy, and one is a very, very practical side of secrecy. People are just, society as a whole, even though it seems like it is just not ready for us. I'm sorry, they're just not. Now, if you're living in a very special microcosm where all you know are craft people and all you know, that's fine. You can be as out as you want to be. But a lot of us, as we get very good at magic, we become very successful, and to become very successful means that you get to interact with a more conservative side of society that are not ready for what we're doing. So you need to make the decision for yourself as to how out you're going to be. I do not wear craft jewelry personally. I do not wear craft jewelry. I do not have craft bumper stickers. Nobody outside of the craft knows what I do. Nobody. And it's just the way it is. That's just how I am. Okay? Because I don't need anybody's negative cooties on top of what I'm doing. I don't want to waste my energy protecting what I'm doing from negatives outside, from people that don't understand it. That's one side of it. And now if that's not part of your lifestyle and you can be as out as you want to be, fine. That's fine. I'm not saying that you're wrong and I'm right at all. But the other side of it is, even within the craft community, you don't want to talk about your magic. You don't, because what we're trying to do when we're doing magical spells is we are building up energy that has to explode into manifestation. If it explodes into the manifestation of your lips moving, then it's already found expression in the physical world. You want it to find expression in the physical world in the form that you're visualizing, not in your blabbing mouth. So if you want to be successful and effective in magic, don't talk about what you're doing. Don't talk about what you've done. Don't talk about how powerful you are. Don't talk about any of it. Because the more you talk about it, the less it's so. It's just the way it is. It's an age-old secret, and it works. The more you can keep your mouth shut about this stuff, the more power you're going to have. And that's just how it is. Now, as you get good at this stuff, you realize that along with power comes responsibility. And I don't want to get into the ethics of magic right now because I don't have time in this podcast. That's a huge amount of talk about that. You know, if you listen to I would say even 3 or 4 of the podcasts on our website, you'll get where we're coming from. But remember that moralism and ethics are different. I don't particularly like the witches read. That's sort of new. It's not an old school witchcraft thing. 8 words that Wiccan read, fulfill, and it harm none, do what you will. I don't need anybody to tell me what to do. I don't need you to tell me what to do, and I don't need to tell you what to do. Just know that an idea never leaves its source. So when you cast a spell, your idea is highly magnified so that it can have expression in the physical world. It looks like we get back 9-fold what we put out, or 3-fold. It looks like that. I'd say 9-fold, but some people say 3-fold. That's the phenomenon, but it's because it never left in the first place. Where would it go? It can't. It can't leave. So yes, you do want to look at that if you're doing spells that are going to interfere with somebody's free will. that is going to come back on you because it can't leave you. If you're going to do spells to attack people, it's going to come back on you. It can't leave you. So, to me, ethics of spellcasting is a real no-brainer if you recognize what magic really is. I mean, the idea never leaves you. It can't leave you. It can look like it did, but it can't. So, I mean, it's totally, I think that magic is like electricity. And, the idea of white magic versus black magic versus gray magic is those are terms that people have coined, which are talking about the way that we're focusing our intent. Now, Crowley used to say that white magic was the seeking of one's true will, or the seeking of the knowledge and conversation of the holy guardian angel, and anything but that was black magic. So, so from his perspective, any kind of money spell, if it wasn't part of your true will, your true purpose in life, was black. And I don't mean black in a racist way. I mean black that it was the absence of light. But again, it's not up to me to tell you what that is. These are things for you to discover for yourself. And the way that you can discover them for yourself is through meditation and through understanding and linking up with your higher self, with your higher mind, with your inner guide, with your spirit guide, with your holy guardian angel, with your inner teacher, whatever you want to call it. And also, I'll go into this on more deeply at another time. If you want to know whether what you're doing is appropriate or not, that's why we have divination. That's why we have the tools of divination and scrying and meditation, is so that we can see beyond the veil what's true energetically in any situation. So I would hope that this little teeny primer on building your magical power is somewhat helpful and somewhat useful to you. And I would recommend that you get through each one of these sides of these pyramids, and that you build them from now on. And what we want is a balance in power of all four of those sides. And in another podcast, when we talk about practical magic, we will go into, once you built that power, what we're going to do with it. And I look forward to that.